Hello, yes, that's right. It's Joe here live on JOYRIDER TV for some more Q&A, where I am going to be answering your most challenging catamaran sailing questions. Oh, yes, indeed. I'm coming to you from Vasiliki on the Greek island of Lefkos, and I can tell you something, the cork has definitely been popped on some champagne sailing this week, with every single day this week really delivering the goods. It has been coming in a little bit later than normal, but every day this week it has been around the 20 knot mark, perhaps even a little bit more. And one of the main events this week was on Tuesday. We had a round the rock race. And if you know about the round the rock, if you've seen the video, you will know the rock is a cruel place. And this time it was no exception. So very exciting times, very good sailing this week. And I had some really great burning laps just yesterday on the sea too from Goodall Design, and that bad boy was absolutely cooking. I can't wait to get my hands on the footage and start wading through that to put some sort of video together. There we go. That's what's happening in my world. Hello to everybody who's tuning in already. Hello to Wojtek. Oh, sorry. And hello to Benny. And hello to Ahichu. Oh, hello to Jason, tuning in from Long Island, New York. Philip's on board. Hello, Philip. Great to have you with us. Zach is on board as well. And Zach, in fact, has just smashed the like button. And I suggest everybody else does that as well. Get it done now, and then you know it's done. Leland Lee is on board in Clearwater, Florida. As always, I don't think Leland Lee ever misses one of these. So thanks for tuning in, Lee. William's on board. Your video's really awesome. I learnt how to sail with my Hobie 16 here in Michigan, USA. Great stuff. I hate you says, sorry for my ridiculous username. Yeah, it's only when you actually say it out loud you realize what it says. So, as always, I'm going to be answering your questions on catamaran sailing. If you are lucky enough to be here in the live chat, then just put it in the live chat and I will respond to your questions. If you're watching this later on, but you've got a question about maybe something to do with your boat, perhaps the sailing of your boat, put it in the comments below and I will respond to that question in next week's Q&A. Yes. So we've also got Axel on board, who has just bought a Hobiecat for $800. Thanks for the help. All right, nice. Yeah. Hopefully that $800 has bought you a nice, reliable, seaworthy boat. There's always the chance there's going to be something to spend on it. I would guess, well, I would always suggest the most important thing to spend money on with a boat, especially if you don't know its history so well, is the things that hold the mast up. The biggest and perhaps most common thing to go wrong with a boat that we're talking about, these sort of boats, is the mast falling down. So to spend another $200 on some new rigging to make sure that the mast is going to stay up is definitely a worthy investment. I hate you says, I've been watching your videos and really got my Hobie 16 functional and working well thanks to the information. El Manuel's on board. Hello, nice to have you with us. Inflatable catamaran sailor here. Looking forward to your insights. Great stuff. Yeah, I am still yet to sail an inflatable cat. I had reached out to Minicat to see if they would be interested to get one of their boats out here because I absolutely would love to see how these bad boys perform, because they are almost certainly the most practical type of catamaran, especially if you are short of space and you're perhaps not going to go sailing quite as often. But I'd like to know firsthand what the actual sailing experience is like. I think they certainly look the business. So great to have you on board. All right, so I hate you says, when sailing mostly on a broad reach, my mast seems to be over rotating. All right, so perhaps if you could, oh right, yeah, Hobie 16. Yeah, so what that would be is generally because the base of the mast might be just a little bit worn. So what we should have on the base of the mast, on the 16, on the 14, is it should have some sort of stops like this, if we're looking straight onto it. And then on, so this is the mast step. And then on the actual mast base itself, there would be some bits that come down like this. And the idea is that these little raised bits on the mast step engage with these bits that extend down from the mast foot, and that is what is meant to stop your mast from rotating too far. But if you've got a slightly older boat, like even some of our boats here, because they've been used so much, they do get a lot of wear in this place because it's just metal on metal. And once those have worn away so much, there's actually nothing to stop your mast from over rotating. So unfortunately, the only thing you can really do is replace it. I'm just trying to think, not having one in front of me, but I think it's actually the mast step which gets more wear than the mast base. So the way to prevent that would be to replace that, or perhaps look at inventing something. Maybe that's something that I should look at with one of our older boats, is inventing a retrofit mast rotation plug that sits in here and stops it from over rotating. Perhaps there's already something available on the market. What I find is, if you think there might be something available on the market, I have a look at murrays.com, because they are the best equipped store online for anything what we're talking about here, and worth a look there. All right, so just coming through the live chat, we've got Jeff on board. Hello, Jeff. Jeff has just bought a 1982 Hobie 16. First trip out, realized it's got soft spots on top of the hulls. Sides seem solid. Is it worth trying to reinforce the tops with resin or epoxy, or do need to replace them? No, I would certainly go for the reinforce them method, and the most tried and tested method is definitely the injection of epoxy, where the makeup of the hull, if we look side on, is you've got the outside layer, and then there's an inside layer, and then in between these two layers there's a foam sandwich kind of layer. And the way that we do the injection of resin into the soft bit is, what we're looking to do is we drill a hole down through here, but we stop there before we go through this bottom layer, and we drill several holes in here, depending on how big the area is. And then we take some epoxy resin and we, using a syringe, we get it into this cavity so it fills all of these empty spaces. And then when that sets, this bit of the boat should then be rock solid. The reason your boat goes solid is because perhaps the foam on the inside has become brittle and started breaking, or perhaps it's because the resin that originally stuck these layers together has failed and they're no longer stuck together, which is why they move. So we definitely want to stick them back together to stop them moving, because if we don't, this soft area is likely to spread. And of course, when it spreads, then you've got a much bigger issue. So I would certainly have a look at that. Just be careful with the drilling that you don't drill all the way through, because then it becomes a bit more of a job. All right, we got Greg on board. It's been a while. Yeah, it certainly has. Great to have you back with us. Jan Leo is on board. Jan Leo says, a Waszp sailor let me try his boat this week. Nice. Thinking about getting one for the solo days. What do you think? Yeah, I think the Waszp is a very good choice for single-handed sailing. One of our instructors on the beach is a fanatical Waszp sailor, and he is always raving about how good they are. And the Waszp, if you didn't know, is basically a more kind of, what would you call it? I don't want to say mass produced, but it's a more standardized version of an international moth. So it's a foiling boat for one person. And when you see these boats, they are absolutely tiny, but they're so quick and very responsive. And the Waszp is easier to sail than the moth and more robust and a hell of a lot cheaper. If you bought a moth brand new, you'd probably be looking in excess of 30,000 euros. Whereas a Waszp, I think you should be able to get a good one for under 10, maybe 7. So definitely a viable option, and very lightweight, easy to manage on yourself, and a lot of fun, and quite a good learning curve. So it's not like you're going to get bored of it at any time ever. The only thing with foiling boats, which is important, is you need to have water of a certain depth, because what you don't want to be doing is whacking the bottom with those foils. But yes, very good. All right, Wojtek says, sorry if that's not how you pronounce your name, but I'm thinking maybe it's at least close. Can I ask a question about Hobie 16 jib? What is the Cunningham eye in this sail? Did you use as a jib, Cunningham? Yeah, that's a good question, actually. Yeah, what you have in some Hobie 16 jibs, if this is the tack, the front bottom corner, then we've got the wire that comes out with the eyelet like this, generally with some rope around here. And then here, there's a second eyelet, which would lead you to the impression that you could use this as a Cunningham, a downhaul for the jib. Now, you may think that by putting more tension on the luff, that's doing the same as a downhaul. Well, it's not. What that is, because we've got this wire luff, the more rig tension is not going to flatten the jib the same way that pulling on more jib Cunningham on an F18 is going to flatten the jib. More rig tension on a Hobie 16 is going to give you more power. So it's actually doing the opposite. Whereas I've never even considered this. So this is a great question. Whereas if you used this hole, it's not on all Hobie 16 jibs, but certainly a lot of them. And you took a line from here round here and maybe put a purchase in it, pull a bit of tension on, then this in theory should flatten the jib off a bit because we're stretching the luff, which is going to act the same as downhaul on the mainsail. So I think it's a viable option. But what I wouldn't do, and I've never heard anybody talk about this ever, which is why it just gets overlooked. But what I would definitely not do is pull it too tight, because you could end up stretching your jib too much and possibly even damaging it. Great question there. Thank you. All right, we've got Mr. Tony KP on board, I believe in Denmark. All right, so I hate you back on the topic of the mast rotation. Says, I thought the mast would point at the sail. Well, unfortunately not, because what happens with the pressure on the rig is, if this is the mast, and then you've got the boom here, we don't need to worry about drawing the sail on this occasion. And then when we put pressure from the main sheet, which would be like here, looking straight down on the boom, it pushes the boom this way, which forces the mast round. So if there's nothing to stop the mast from rotating, it will just go around. And it will actually only stop when the tension in the rigging prevents it from going any further. All right, Willis is on board. Hello, Willis. Nice to see you. Skunk Works Rifle 2 is on board. Nice to have you with us. Hobiecat 16 is what I learned to sail on. Best fun for sure. Oh, yeah. I'm always quite aware that I talk about Hobie 16s more than every other type of boat on JOYRIDER TV. For those who don't sail Hobie 16s, I apologize for that, but it is because one, they're the most popular catamaran in the world, and two, they really are so much fun. So apologies if you're not a Hobie 16 person. Okay, so we've got Willem on board. Hello, in South Africa. How long do you have left at Total JOYRIDER sailing holidays? All right, I remember a video a while back saying you're leaving. Yeah, I actually work for a company called Wildwind Sailing Holidays, who do it. This is an unbiased report, but Wildwind Sailing Holidays has got to be the best place that you can go for small boat sailing anywhere at all, hands down. If what you like is a really good atmosphere, amazingly convenient sailing, a massive range of boats, an enormous, very user-friendly sailing area where the water stays completely flat, even when it's 30 knots of wind. And if you like to have a combination of lighter wind in the morning, so you could try more powerful boats, perhaps, and then stronger wind in the afternoon, so you could just go and send it. I don't think there's anywhere else in the world that does it quite as well as Wildwind Sailing Holidays. But in answer to your question, yes, this is my last year with Wildwind Sailing Holidays. I've actually been working here for 28 years now, and I felt that it's time to put more time and effort into the JOYRIDER TV empire, which is currently being built brick by brick. Thank you very much. All right, Ben is on board. Hello, Ben. Says, how do I keep my lines from falling off the trampoline and dragging in the water? Yeah, tricky one. Now, there's all you can do is constant rope management. If you constantly have your mind and your eye on all of the ropes and where they're going, and you're thinking, oh, there's a bit of that going in the water now, get it out before more rope goes in. If you've got a meter of rope in the water, then it's not so bad. You could just flick it back onto the trampoline. Whereas if you've got 3 meters of rope, that's going to pull much harder, and it's going to be more difficult to recover. Yeah. But if you've got a crew, big job for the crew is rope management. If it's windy and you've got a crew, it is I'd say 30% of their job is looking after the ropes. What else can you do? Try to make sure that the ropes on your boat aren't too long. I did make a video about making sure that your main sheet isn't too long. But what you can do, if you think that you never get to the point where your main sheet and traveler line are all the way out and you haven't got anything else to hold on to, if you have never ever got to that point, there is a chance it's too long. And what you can do, if this is our boat, if this is the trampoline of the boat, and here's the main sheet here, what you can do to experiment with the length of your main sheet is with the traveler line, you'd have it tied off with a figure of 8 knot on the back beam here. But instead of tying that figure of 8 knot at the end like this, perhaps have a meter of tail on there. So you're taking a meter of rope off your main sheet, and then, so we're not cutting it, we're just experimenting with the rope length, and then tuck that tail up in the tramp lacing somewhere to get it out of the way. That works really well. All right. So Leland Lee says, if the mast stops at the stop point, it's not over rotated. You might be comparing the shape of the sail to the shape of the mast at the luff. It won't be straight back due to how the wind hits it. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so perhaps if it's your first 16, you might feel that the mast is over rotating, but in fact, this is back to I Hate You, who's just got a 16, talking about mast rotation. But if this is our boat from the top, the general, the angle the mast should end up at is, if this is the shroud, should be pointing just towards the shroud, the back edge, like that. So that is what would be normal. Any further round than there probably does mean you've got a bit of excessive wear. All right. So Wojtek says, back to the jib Cunningham question, I believe it could bring the jib draft forwards and change the shape of the front sail. Going to check it out in practice next week. Yeah, great stuff. I think I'm going to check it out as well, because it really does sound like an exciting and interesting idea, where we could change partly the dynamic of the boat, perhaps squeeze a bit more speed out of her as well. All right, Lee says, hello, Lee. Hello, Joyriders from Macon, Georgia. Is a larger beach dolly needed for a Hobie 18? 89 inches keel to keel. I've been looking for a dolly. No, if you've got, it depends on the shape of your cups. If your cups are this shape like this, then the same beach dolly for the 16 should fit the 18 as well. But some Hobie 16 trolleys have got the same shape cups as the hull. Of course, they're not going to fit. Sorry, that really is stating the obvious, isn't it? If your cups are like that. But the other one is if your boat, your beach dolly doesn't have cups and it's got a bar or bars like that, then you will want to put cups on it for the 18, because when you've got a boat which has a hull with this profile or a flat bottom, you can't just have it sitting on a bar, because that is very likely to dent the hull. It has to sit in a cup which supports it more evenly. There we go. Okay, I Hate You says, this is best question of the day. How do we support you? You've given us so much. Well, thanks for asking. So I think in answer to that question, there are 3 good ways of supporting JOYRIDER TV. One is through Patreon. You'll find a link to Patreon in the description of every single video on JOYRIDER TV. Another one is through channel memberships. If you'd prefer to stay within the YouTube website and not go outside the website to support the channel, then by becoming a channel member, this is a nice way of supporting the channel. With Patreon and channel memberships, they work like a kind of monthly subscription kind of service. You do get some extra perks, let's call it, by signing up to either of those. And that's I just really appreciate everybody who's doing that, because it's by people doing that that gives me the enthusiasm to continue making the videos and doing these Q&A sessions, because like anybody, at times my day job does get in the way, and it means doing these extra things becomes slightly less fun if I just haven't got time to do them. So thanks to everybody who has been supporting the channel. If you'd rather get something for your money and support the channel, then head to totaljoyrider.com, where you could get a t-shirt or a hoodie like this one. This one's called Tequila Sunset. It's actually my favorite design at the moment. So everything on totaljoyrider.com is from JOYRIDER TV. I even design all the t-shirts myself as well. So thanks very much for the question there. All right, and thanks to Scott for dropping it in the slot and hitting me with, I believe that is a super sticker. Thank you very much, Scott. That's another great way of supporting the channel during the live chat. Is at the bottom of the live chat, there is a sign of a kind of dollar bill. Click on that, and there you go. Thank you very much. All right, so who else is on board? We've got Joachim on board, I believe, in Argentina. Choppy waters out around here at the moment. Great stuff. We've got Sunset Wingman on board. Stitch sleeve. Oh, this is on the topic of stopping your ropes from going off the boat. He says, if you stitch sleeves into the trampoline and put pool noodles, not easy to say, in them. I have one in the back and the sides of the tramp. Oh, and I see. Yeah, this is a pretty cool idea, actually. So if this is your trampoline normally flat, if you had a pocket, or on a Hobie 16, you could even do this with the lacing somehow, and get one of these swimming pool noodles, which is a bit like pipe lagging, and just get one going down each side of the trampoline, or maybe just one at the back, and then that's going to prevent your ropes from just disappearing into the water off the back. That is a great idea. Thank you very much for that. All right, Wojtek says, I've got another question. Is it allowed in a regatta in the Hobie 16 class to use lighter blocks for the jib clue? Yes, I believe it is. I think that is something where you have complete freedom of what blocks that you're using. I'm pretty sure you can use whatever blocks for the main sheet as you want as well. Now, you might say, well, if that's the case, I'm going to bang a 10-to-1 main sheet system on my Hobie 16. Well, that is certainly going to make it easier to sheet in. But so answer to your question, yes. Jib blocks, yes. Main sheet blocks, if you increase the purchase, it makes it easier to pull in, but then it means to move, for the boom to move the same amount, you have to release a lot more rope. So you are, yeah, I think you get what I mean. It's less effort, but more rope. So 1 foot of rope with a, I'm making this up, by the way, 1 foot of rope with a 6-to-1 will move the boom, let's say that much. Whereas 1 foot of boom with a 10-to-1 will move the boom that much. It's not accurate at all. I'm actually going to do a video on this with purchase systems and the difference that they make as we increase the purchase. All right. So, yeah, Sunset Wingman agrees. Hobie doesn't restrict the block type. Great stuff. All right. El Manuel says, any pro tips how to use the Traveller besides the basics? Well, sometimes the basics are all that we need because that's all that there is. So the two main reasons to use the Traveller, plus a bonus third reason. How about that? First reason is point of sail. So if we've got our boat here, so upwind, we have the Traveller in the middle. If we're sailing downwind, so on a broad reach, then we have our Traveller all the way out. But all the way out doesn't mean all the way out. What? That's confusing. No, we don't ever want to put the Traveller all the way to the end of the track. What we'd want as a maximum for the Traveller car is to go, if this is the tow strap, is for the Traveller car to be kind of halfway between the tow strap and the end. That should be our maximum, and we should never have to put it out further than there. So that's our range, upwind, downwind. And then if we're reaching or sailing half wind, then about halfway is probably appropriate. If you've got a jib Traveller on your boat as well, the golden rule with the jib Traveller is that it should always be a little bit further out than the main Traveller. So on any boat with a jib Traveller, the furthest in it will go isn't all the way in, which means that is doing it for us, that it's already out a bit before we start. And then if we're sailing on a half wind course and the Traveller's out here, then the same all the way out for the downwind. So that is number one use of the Traveller. Number two use of the Traveller is wind strength. So when we start getting overpowered and perhaps we're sailing upwind, and to keep the boat sailing, to keep the boat going without lifting the hull too much, or perhaps having to keep wanging it right up into the wind, we're having to loosen quite a lot of main sheet. It's much more efficient to loosen the Traveller and then play the main sheet from that position. So that is actually the same for upwind and reaching. If you're finding you have to use a lot of main sheet and you can never get it all the way in, then let the Traveller out a bit more so that you can get the main sheet all the way in the biggest lulls when the wind is at its lightest. So you're really cranking it in those at those times. Of course, if we're letting the main Traveller out for high winds, then we should also be letting the jib Traveller out as well. Yeah. So those are the two main reasons and uses of the traveller. The other one is if the boat has stalled and we can't get it going forwards, by letting the traveller and the main sheet out. So if you've messed up a tack perhaps, or you just can't get the boat to go forwards, let out the main sheet and the traveller, and then that is going to allow the boat to turn away from the wind. Because what happens if you're stalled is, if this is the mainsail, if you've got any tension at all in the back edge of the mainsail and your boat's not going forwards, when the wind hits that back edge of the mainsail, it just turns you back up into the wind. So letting the traveller and the main sheet out is going to help you there. We can also let the traveller out if we need to stop. So if it's before the start of a race, or we're just having a break, having a sandwich, smoking a pipe, something like that, those sort of things. There we go. All right. So back to the live chat. All right. All right. So we've got Toby on board. Hello, Toby. I have a 15 with a zipper luff and furling drum. It has the Hobie kit, but it's very stiff to pull the furling jib line, and the top halyard block seems to make a tangled mess. Yeah. All right. So what Toby's got going on is he's got a furler on his jib. Yeah. A furler that doesn't furl very nicely, really does suck the fun out of having a furler at all, somewhat. So what we'd have at the bottom is one of two types of furling drum, where there's like an opening in there with the rope coming out. It's less likely that the furling drum is the issue with a furler that's not working so well. With the chunky furling drums, which I believe are standard for the Hobie 15, you can actually get replacement parts for them. So replacing the whole drum is fiercely expensive. It's about €400, which really brings a tear to the eye. But you can get new bearings for the furling drum, which do really make it work a lot nicer. So you just need to get those from a Hobie dealer, and just obviously make sure that the drum that they're selling the bearings for is the same as the one that you've got. But before you do that, the most likely point where the friction, the resistance is coming from. So here's our, I think that's how we say there's a break there. We're just skipping a bit of distance. Up here, there will be some sort, let's say we've got the jib halyard blocks here. The other side, the jib halyard blocks, you will have some sort of furler, swivel. Now, these swivels are really prone to not working very well after a short time. If you sail near the coast, even if you don't, you haven't capsized and got salt water on your swivel, but just that sea air with the salt in it is going to degrade your swivel, and they start grinding after probably just after a year or two. So the quickest, easiest fix, or the first thing to check, is check the swivel. So either put your boat on its side or drop the mast, and then just take the two ends of the swivel and see if it moves. Because if, when you're furling the jib, the swivel isn't turning, and this is quite normal to happen, if that's not turning, you're twisting all of this, which eventually, it's not going to take long, but you're going to have either a broken forestay or the the luff of the jib is going to break or the jib halyard is going to break. So having a swivel that works well is absolutely critical, because it is something that is going to stop you breaking another piece of rigging. So check your swivel, and then replacing the swivel. It is a little bit more expensive than you think. I would expect it to be about 50 euros. So, but well worth doing. And then at the end of the season, soak your swivel in fresh water, lubricate it, and put it in a glass cabinet. Keep it safe in a humidity controlled room, because that thing is very important. Okay. I hope that helps. All right. Hello to Andy H. And thanks very much for the super sticker. Very kind. And I appreciate it very much. Andy says, thanks again for your help with the dented mast last week. Got a used one and headed up to Michigan for some sailing tomorrow. Great stuff. Yes, I was sailing with a sailor from who sails on what lake was it now? Maybe it was Lake Michigan. I think he's from, is there a place called Michigan City? I think it was there. That's where he's from. Very good. Good sailing. All right. Thanks very much, Andy. All right. So Philip says, oh, this is exciting. My new Whirlwind sails have arrived yesterday. I'm looking at setting them tomorrow. Any advice I should follow? Yeah, I would say it's all about batten tension. When you put the battens in, don't put any tension into the battens. So when it's lying flat on the floor, don't put the battens in so much that the whole thing curves. Put them in so much that the battens absolutely can't move. That is the correct amount. So when I say absolutely can't move, once you've tied them in, try pulling it and pushing it. And if it absolutely can't move, then that's good. If there's creases in the batten pocket, and depending on how you're tying the battens in, if this is a batten pocket here, if after you've sailed the boat a couple of times, if you start seeing creases like this, then it means that the rope has stretched, or perhaps the way you've put the battens in has stretched somehow. So you just then would need to redo your battens after a couple of times. Maybe the sail's stretched a little bit. But what we don't want ever is to have these creases in the batten pocket. That does mean that the batten's too loose. There we go. Oh my goodness. We've got Vinicius, who has asked a very big question, which is, tell us the secret to sail against the wind in a Hobie 14. Whew. I think on that note, I'm going to take a short commercial break. Also available at totaljoyrider.com. You can get a Joyrider TV, giving it the beans bottle like this. Makes your drinks stay cold for longer, and it means you're not using plastic bottles all the time, which is what we're looking at doing these days. And it means that nobody knows what it is that you're drinking. Very good. All right. So, thank you very much. We've got another super sticker just coming in from I Hate You. Thanks for the help, man. I've got to get back to work. Yeah, great stuff. Thank you very much. It's good to know that this is appreciated to that extent. All right. So the secret to sail against the wind in a Hobie 14. Yeah, I haven't got a straightforward answer for that, but I'm just trying to think, what would I do? I think if you're sailing a boat which doesn't have a jib and you're trying to find the angle that you should be sailing at, I would, if we've got, let's just talk about the angle at which we're going to sail. So if this is the wind coming from here, as a starting point, we want to put the boat at 45 degrees. to the wind. If anybody watching has got any good tips for this, please chuck them in the live chat, because I haven't really thought this through, because it's pretty rare, to be honest, that I sail without a jib. But I start off at 45 degrees to the wind. This is made easier to judge if we've got telltales on the front of the boat. So make sure you've got telltales on the front of the boat. I use video cassette. It's very cheap, and it really works incredibly well. And then once you've got the boat pointing the right way, and then start to bring the main sheet in, and then start watching the telltales on the main sheet. And what you're doing is you're balancing the amount of sheet tension against the angle at which you're sailing to the wind. You could sail with the main sheet tighter in and sail closer to the wind, but your boat speed is going to drop right down. So it really is a case of just finding the sweet spot of where you feel that you're either 45 degrees to the wind or perhaps even a bit closer, and you still feel that the boat is moving forwards at a good rate. I'm sorry, I can't really give you much more than that on this question at this time. I'll give it some thought, and perhaps even get out on a 14 and make a video on the topic of upwind Hobie 14 sailing. But I am by no means an expert in Hobie 14 sailing, but perhaps it's about time I was. Thank you very much. Okay, we've got Cebu on board. Nice rock ballad yesterday. Yes, Thomas. Yeah, we finally got the rock ballad out. All right, so Sunset Wingman says, I thought the 16 was restricted to 6-1 and the 18 is 7-1. Yeah, that is quite likely, actually. I was just using the 10-1 as an example, but I wouldn't actually think anybody would ever do it. But yes, I'm sure you're right. All right. Wojtek says, Traveller is also useful when we are jibing in heavy wind. A bit of finesse gives the result of a smooth mainsail movement from side to side. Absolutely. Luca says, Jib Traveller versus main Traveller. Nice info. Thanks. Great. Glad you appreciated that. All right. Where are we? Sorry. Losing my place in the live chat. In fact, at this stage in the game, if we can have no more questions in the live chat, because we've been going 48 minutes now and I've still got some preloaded questions to get through, to look at. All right, where are we? Apologies for this. All right, Sunset Wingman says, take the main sheet tension off. It jams the bearings in the furler and the swivel. All right, so this is on the topic of the furling jib. So release your main sheet tension because it tightens the forestay up more. It jams the bearings in the furler and the swivel. Also, trying to furl it upwind in heavier wind is much harder than to furl it if you're going downwind. Yeah, that's definitely a trick that we use here. When we're furling jibs, is we'll just make sure we've got space downwind of where we are. We'll put the boat straight downwind. And then when the boat's going straight downwind, it does furl so much easier. Thanks for that. All right, I've got a super sticker just coming from Philip. Thank you very much, Philip. Much appreciated. We've got Cody on board. Do you know anything about how to operate a crab claw sail? No, I've never even heard of one. So that is a strong no. All right. So Skunk Works Rifle 2 says, if you buy a used Hobie, remember to check everything and tweak the lines of the mast for tension. you would be surprised how small things make a big difference under low wind or high winds. Great stuff. Thanks for that there, Skunkworks Rifle 2. Enjoyed the show, everyone. Hagged. Perfect. Thank you for that. All right. So before going on to the next question, I am just going to do the first one in the live chat. In the preloaded. You may have noticed last week's session got cut rather short by some poor internet. So I have got some questions which I was going to go through last week as well. So the first one is from Graham, who says, I once lowered the mainsail in 35 knots of wind upwards. We rolled it as it came down, taking the main sheet out. We were worried that we would snap the mast without the main acting as a backstay. So we lashed a trapeze to the corner casting. All right. So using the mainsail as a backstay, it is something that we do. I'm just going to draw this if you don't quite get what we're talking about. If this is the boat here, it's quite a unique shaped hull. There's our mast. There's our forestay there, jib, and we've dropped the mainsail. Now, what Graham is saying is with the mainsail down, he's worried about this unsupported section of mast up here, that there's nothing stopping it from breaking. Nothing is giving it extra strength. Now, this would only be a problem if we were flying a spinnaker without the mainsail up. Then I would say it is definitely potential issue there. So when we're using the main sheet as a backstay is only necessary with the spinnaker up. When you're sailing in normal situation, either with the main up or with the main down, what we've got is the mast is supported by the shrouds. So there's no need to use a trapeze wire as a backstay because the shrouds are already doing that job. I know they're not going all the way to the back of the boat, but they're going back far enough that they're supporting the mast enough so that it's not going to break. Because the jib is pulling from this point here. And then if we didn't have any sails up and you thought that there's enough wind that just on the bare mast you could break the mast, then oh my goodness, that is going to be a lot of wind. But before you break the mast, I think the boat will just get blown over, to be honest. And I would think that that wouldn't happen until we get upwards of 80 knots of wind or something. So I wouldn't think that that would be an issue. So the time when we are using the main sheet as a backstay basically pulls the mast backwards and gives it support. The support that we're getting is above the hounds where the rigging attaches. And the time that we need that support is if we're flying a spinnaker in heavy winds, because where the spinnaker is pulling from is above the hounds, perhaps as much as 1.5 meters above the hounds on this piece of mast, which is unsupported. So that is when we do need to be sailing with a tight main sheet to look after that bit of the mast. There we go. I hope that helps. All right, we got Anno on board, long-time viewer here from Sweden. Nice to have you with us, Anno. We have actually got a lot of Swedish folks with us this week. It's because it's midsummer. I think that must be a national holiday in Sweden because it happens every year. Recently bought an A-class, which is a 2007 Bimair XJ. I have quite a lot of experience in dinghies, but none in catamarans. Any quick tips? Wow. Okay. I just have to think what would be the first quick tip. All right. First and most important tip with the catamaran, and this is about holding the boat while you're in the water. So let's draw this from above. With a dinghy, a monohull, you can quite happily wind from up here. You can quite happily stand here, hold the boat sort of just from midway down the boat, and you'll be fine. But with a catamaran, this is actually the first thing that I learned with catamaran sailing ever, is always hold the boat at the front, so that then the boat will naturally just hang into the wind. This is the first and most important thing with catamaran sailing. Then the next thing that you'll find going from a monohull to a catamaran is when you let the main sheet out on a monohull, the boat will generally stop if it's not a fully battened mainsail. Whereas with a catamaran, it's going to still keep going. So just be ready for that and adjust your focus to the amount of space that you need to slow down, to maneuver. The catamaran covers a lot more space more quickly than the monohull. So you really need to be very spatially aware, other people on the water, obstacles, obstructions, where the beach is. The beach can come at you pretty quickly when sailing a catamaran if it's windy. So those are the quickest tips I've got. All right. So, all right. Sunset Wingman says upwind in a 14 might have blocks that are too tall or too much mast rake to actually get enough main sheet tension on to straighten the leach of the sail. Could be. Thanks very much for that. All right. We've got Russell on board just here showing support. Thank you very much. Been here from the start. Keep up the good work. Thank you very much, Russell. It's always a pleasure. One day our paths shall cross and it will be a great day. All right. Philip says, I went out for a few times with the new main sheet. Maffioli Swift cord, 10 mil. I had 12 mil before, but it kept jumping out of the traveller cleat. Cleats look good, but the angle might be my problem. Yes, this is actually a thing. I can't remember the name of the brand. It's not, it's like, can't remember the name of the brand of traveller cleat, but these were very popular. And these, it's not actually the traveller cleat, it's the traveller cleating bracket. And it's kind of sloped like that. And your cleat sits on top like that. Does anybody understand this drawing? And then this would be where it kind of pivots like that. And then you'd have a fair lead there and your rope will run through like that. Something like that. Does that make any sense at all? I hope so. Don't make me go 3D. You don't want that. No, you don't want that. Okay, so with some traveller cleats, they have adjustment of where the actual cleat can be on the mounting plate. So it will have a bolt holding it in with a nut in the bottom. And what happens is over time, it's natural for it to happen because if we look at this plate from the bottom, it would be like this sort of shape. And then it will have two slots like this. And then the cleat would mount sort of like here with the bolts going through the slot. If this is slid backwards at all, then it will just keep pulling out of the cleat. That is just how it is. So if you have got these slots for your jib traveler, for your travelers, or jib sheets, anything at all, the cleat wants to be as far forwards as it can possibly go. There we go. All right. So Sunset Wingman also has a BIM Air XJ A-class. This is getting exciting now. It's the fastest cat in flat water, which means light air. You'll be destroyed by a modern seaboard. A-class, classic A-class boats in heavy air and chop. All right. I'll just leave that between you for what upgrades to put in there. So going on to the next one. Again, no more questions in the live chat if we can avoid it, please. We've got Johnny Easy on board. Nice to have you with us, Johnny. Thanks for the tip with the 4mm Ronstan bow shackle for the jib clue. It arrived today. Looks a bit thin, but from the Ronstan website, it says it holds 600 kilograms. Yeah, they're a lot stronger than they look. I think you can say that. And it is standard. It's absolutely standard on the Hobie 16. All right, so back to the preloaded questions. Thanks to everybody who's still with us. Very nice to have you here. All right, we've got Leo on board from the Netherlands, and he's talking about downhaul or cunningham. He says, what is better, sailing with or without cunningham on, with one hull flying, no steering, traveller in or out? Okay, so we've already talked about traveller today, but cunningham, the whole story with the cunningham or downhaul is when you're not sailing the boat, have the downhaul. I'm just going to call it the downhaul. Have the downhaul off, totally loose. So then the sail doesn't have any curve to it. Pulling the downhaul on is, I see it as the on switch for the boat. Once you've pulled the downhaul on, if the wind's really light, it's not really going to do much. But if the wind is strong, then your mainsail becomes some sort of ravenous beast that really just wants to taste some boat speed. So don't pull the downhaul on until you're actually ready to start sailing. Like a lot of the time, I'll actually sail out into some space, some open water before pulling the downhaul on if it's windy, because I want to be able to just stop the boat without the mainsail flogging, which will happen once you've pulled the downhaul on if it's windy. But so in light winds, we're just going to pull on a minimum amount of downhaul. So we're just going to take the creases out of the mainsail. And then as you get more wind and you feel that you need to depower, perhaps you're having to sheet out a lot, then you should start to bring the cunningham on more. And then when you get to the amount of wind, when you're double trapezing, you're going fast, lifting the hull, then your cunningham should be on maximum, as hard as you can pull it. And that is what you do with it. You just bring it on as hard as you can when the wind is of that strength. The only time when we change it is if we were going downwind on the with the spinnaker up, we'd let the downhaul off. And in fact, if you're going downwind without a spinnaker up, if you really wanted to get the most performance out of the boat, we'd let the downhaul off to about half to put some curve back into the sail. But other than that, for upwind sailing or reaching, because we're going very fast, we're generating a lot of apparent wind, we're going to keep that downhaul really cranked on. That's going to give us a flatter sail, a lower center of effort, which is further forwards, which is going to give us more drive. There we go. That is the full story of that. Part two of the question. What's better, to steer in a straight line or to steer up and down for the gusts? All right, this is a good one. If you're sailing upwind and you get a small gust, the hull will lift. As the hull lifts, you can allow the boat to naturally turn up towards the wind. This is going to stop the hull. Well, it might stop the hull from lifting any more. But if having let the boat turn towards the wind, the hull is still lifting more, then that means it's what we'll call a big gust. And then you should use a combination of that bit of steering and a little bit of main sheet. One arm of main sheet makes a massive difference to the power. So you allow the boat to come up, give one arm of main sheet, then ideally the hull won't drop down. It will just stop lifting any higher, because what we're trying to achieve is sailing the boat with the hull out of the water. And then if the hull starts dropping, we'll then basically undo what we've just done. So first thing, we'll sheet the main back in. Next thing, we'll just take the boat back off the wind slightly to keep the power on. But the main thing that we're doing whenever we're sailing is we're trying not to steer too much. Any steering that we do is going to disturb the flow of water around the hulls, and that is going to slow us down. All right. So last question in the preloaded is from Gus. And he says, what would be a good deal on a Hobie Tiger these days? Nice question. All right. So I'm going to be brutally honest on what my opinions